This conference will now be recorded.
So again, my name is David Heller. I'm the project manager on the SJTPO side for this project, and I'm joined in the room. I don't know if I guess we can go around in our room here. Jenna, do you want to just say hello?
I'm Jenna Monahan. I'm an assistant planner at SJTPO and helping with writing the long-range plan for this 2025.
Okay, Ken.
Ken Skellinger, technical specialist at SJTPO. I'm working on the seasonal variability study.
John Peterson, SJTPO, Sub-Regional Specialist.
Bill Schiavi, planner at SJTPO.
Okay, and on the consultant side, Bob and Tom, if you just want to give a
Bob Scardamelia, RLS Demographics. I guess I'm kind of the prime contractor here.
Hi, good morning. Tom Duretsky with Camoin Associates. We're an economic development firm assisting on the employment projection side of things.
Okay, and as I said earlier, it looks like we have representatives from Atlantic, the city of Vineland, Cape May County. It looks like of DRBA, CCCTMA, SJTA. It looks like Cumberland. Looks like we may be missing somebody from Salem. But like I said, we can always follow up with them afterwards. So I just want to maybe, before we kick right into the meeting, let me just do a very brief overview of the agenda. Hopefully you all got a copy of the agenda. Can everybody see this? Oh, am I sharing this?
No.
Oh, okay, let me just see. Let me just,
I think
Share down the
Share
bottom,
down the bottom.
bottom middle.
oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay,
And you go to window.
okay, thanks.
Oh, okay.
And share down below.
Okay,
There you
okay. All right, can everybody see? I just wanted to do a very quick overview of the agenda. Hopefully everybody can see my screen.
No, we can't
So
see your screen. It's showing the go-to app on your screen.
okay, let me just share window. Let me see here. Let me just see. Window.
Maybe go back to entire screen. Yeah. And share. And then hit the Word document.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jenna. So, all right. I just wanted to, again, go through a very quick overview of the agenda. Introduction, that's what we're doing, we just did. So Bob Scardamelia, the lead consultant, he's going to kind of be probably the main presenter for this whole presentation, give a summary of the population and household projections methodology, show some of the results. He'll follow that with employment projections methodology. Then we're going to do a brief summary of the county to the MCD or municipal disaggregation, and then the municipal or MCD municipal level population and demographics to the TAZ traffic analysis zones. That's the geographic analysis unit required to run a travel demand model. Ken Skellinger will give a brief summary of the methodology behind the seasonal factors. Then we're going to have a video demonstration pre-recorded on the data dashboard, which is in development, but we hope will be a very useful and kind of a neat product of this effort. And then I'll just conclude with some next steps, approval of county, when we get to the next step. So Just a brief overview, and again, it's a workshop format. I think how we'll handle it is Bob will give his, after every sort of module or section, we'll have questions after that, rather than reserving them all till the end. It's a workshop, it's meant to be somewhat interactive, um, so thank you. Now I'm going to hand it over. So any questions or comments on just the agenda or? Okay. So I'm going to hand it over to Bob Scarnavalia, who's again.
Okay. All right, everybody seeing the presentation slide?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, all I needed was a couple. All right, so today we're going to be covering a pretty fair amount of technical information. And I want to start off by just we've already pretty much introduced the team, Tom Doretsky and myself. The one person who's not going to be connected virtually, but is going to do a demonstration of the dashboard is John Rodat, who's a principal at Public Signals LLC. His background is in a lot of local finance, aging analysis, healthcare policy, as well as data visualization. So what I'm going to talk about is kind of the major categories of work that we've been involved in. I want to first introduce you to some of the data sources that we've been working with, how those factor into the development of the population and household projections, how the employment and industry sector projections have evolved, and then the disaggregation to the county totals to the minor civil division and traffic analysis zones. David's going to jump in and do most of the work on the TAS disaggregation, but we're going to go through all of these, and after each of these sections, we'll have an opportunity to have questions. Primary data sources. Well, certainly, my background is as a demographer. I was chief demographer for the state of New York for many years. So the census and census data is always one of my primary data sources. And what is being used here is the historical analysis of population change for the region at the county level is based on 2000, 2010, and the new 2020 decennial census data. Those three benchmark periods define our best data on population and population characteristics. In addition to the decennial census, many of you are probably familiar with the American Community Survey data, which gives us annual updates based on population estimates. And this large-scale survey for the counties, we can use both 1 year and 5 year estimates, and those are incorporated mainly to look at some of the various characteristics, because the population estimates from the Census Bureau provide uh, estimate control totals, but the American Community Survey is what gives us the socioeconomic and housing characteristics of the population. Out of the Census Bureau also is the longitudinal employment and household dynamics data source. This is a relatively unique source that links both demographic and employment data through state departments of labor, state tax offices that look at wage information, a variety of other demographic characteristics to really profile the employed side of the population. One of the most important pieces that funnels into our work out of LEHD is commuting data, because it looks at both workplace employment and has the individual record that looks at the residential movement. So that employment data, commuting data, is an important piece of evaluating the impacts or the links between population and employment. U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis is one of our primary national statistical agencies. Their economic accounts data, they do everything from gross domestic product to employment to industry data. They have a wide range of economic indicators. Their economic accounts input-output models are used nationwide as well as at a local level. And we also incorporated third-party forecasts. Two private companies, Lightcast and Woods and Pool, are of long history of doing regional economic analysis, and we've been able to pull in some of the data that they have used also. I should mention in the employment data here also, the New Jersey Department of Labor is another source that is primarily focused on the labor side, the residents of labor side, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. And the New Jersey Department of Health, direct data on input data on births and deaths. That's a major piece of the demographic model that I'm going to describe. And we got local input primarily in regard to Atlantic, Cape May, and Cumberland counties. Why am I not? There we go. So the population and household methodology. Population change really only occurs by three factors, three components. People are born, people die, people migrate. If you can capture those three components, you get a pretty good idea of population change at pretty much any geographic level. The qualifier there is that the smaller you go in geographic level, the less less reliance or less reliability of local data. So at the national, state, and county level, birth and death data is very high quality. Once you get to sub-county data, it becomes less so because of a lot of residential and address issues. That lead-in is to the first step of the projections and methodology, and that's to evaluate the components of population change. Historically, how have those three components contributed to the change in population at the county level as a first step? So we developed fertility and mortality rates based on the birth and death data. Population change is an identity. Population at 2 points in time. You have good data on births and deaths. The residual of change is migration. Again, I'll talk more about that in a minute. So that historical analysis provides the rates of fertility, mortality, and migration, and then those are built into the projections model to move forward into the future. Prior to that, though, the second step is a calibration step, and this uses the census data from 2010 and 2020 and adjust those input rates, particularly for fertility and mortality, to make sure that the model is generating the reported deaths and births. So calculate these rates, apply them in the projections model, compare the actual birth data and death data to what the model is generating, and then adjust the rates so that those two components are virtually equal. Then the data can be put into the model to develop future assumptions, and we have the ability to test various scenarios driven by those components. The most volatile and important adjustment is migration. Again, births and deaths, we've got very high quality data. Migration in this country, we don't have good quality measures of migration, and so migration is estimated in indirect methods. So the result of that components of change analysis, or the beginning step, the historical results, are what's shown here. The data for April 1 of each of the dates is the census data. The July 1 mid-census point are the Census Bureau's population estimates. And you can see what the population change is. And this is the aggregation of all 4 counties in the region. And you can see that there's been some variation, generally growth, but diminishing growth, and a period between 2010 and 2015 where population actually declined. Difficult economic period for the region, particularly with the closing of a number of casinos and the employment and population associated with that. But you can see that the births and death data, pretty high quality. And the other important thing to look at here is that trend in natural increase, which is simply the difference between births and deaths. Most areas have an excess of births, and so without regard to migration, the population will increase. Not so, not so much so in recent years. I follow New York very closely, and out of New York's 62 counties, close to 30 of them are now in a state of natural decline where deaths exceed births, a result of the baby boom aging into those higher mortality years. So you can see that region-wide, between 2015 and 20, there was actually a negative natural change. COVID-19, the pandemic, is a big factor here, one that kind of raises its head in trying to get a handle on change at a number of steps here. The other important piece is net migration. And so you can see that net migration through the latter part of the first decade of the millennia and the first part of the most recent decade was negative for the region, and a turn up in 2020. That turn up in 2020 is, frankly, I'll say is curious, both for New Jersey and for New York, because the 2020 census figures came in much, much higher than what was anticipated based on the census estimates. So that presents something of a confusing qualifying factor in where we go in the future. That crude net migration rate is simply the number of net migrants divided by the beginning period population. So in the last period, 4,273 divided by the 2015 population equals a 0.7% rate of migration. So when we do that for all 4 of the counties individually, that was just a summary for the region, you can see that there's a fair amount of variation here. Atlantic County declines in the late first decade of the millennium and in the early 2010 to 15 period, and then a slight increase, 1.6%. Cape May, 3.8% increase. Cumberland County, a continuous decline, continuing the previous 10-15-year decline, and a slight increase in Salem County in net migration. That variation in net migration is the piece that is a primary lever in controlling the future population assumptions. On the fertility side, these are graphics looking at actual birth rates for the counties by age of mother. That's important because in generating population projections, you have to understand the interaction between the number of women of childbearing age and their rate of fertility at each age. And what you're seeing in each of the 4 counties is what we would see nationally. Decline in fertility among the youngest ages, older teenagers and early 20s, and relative stability and push forward of that older ages. Basically reflects nationwide delay of marriage, delay of childbearing, reduction of childbearing among younger women. So the 4 counties are pretty representative. Some variations in each that we take account of, but pretty much representative of all of the country. We turn to migration, and migration, difficult thing to get a handle on really. These are graphics of what we call residual net migration. Now, what is that? we don't have good migration data in this country. The American Community Survey asks, so 1 year, where did you live last year? And we can develop migration patterns from that. But migration is a longer period of decision making. What you see is a residual, which simply means that we take the base population of 2010, we apply survival factors to that population, and we basically create an anticipated or expected population in 2020. We've added in births, we've taken account of mortality at each age, and the difference between what we expect in 2020 and what we actually experience in the census results in migration. It's the residual of change. Change is only births, deaths, and migration. So if we have good data on births and deaths, the residual is migration. What is important to notice in each of these four graphs is the similarity of pattern. These counties, and I'll generally say counties nationwide, follow pretty general life cycle patterns. Variation depending upon the county, but you can see across the decade 2010 to 2020 in Atlantic County, whether we're looking at the first half of the decade when that decline due to casino closings, or looking at the latter half of the decade where there's been some recovery, is identical in both periods. Cumberland County, virtually identical. Cape May County, more variation, but that same life cycle pattern is apparent. Salem County, lesser amplitude in each at each age, but still similarity in the pattern. That is justification for, in a projection model, of using those patterns to determine age-related migration. That age-related migration is controlled by the crude migration rate. That's simply what you saw in that earlier components table. The rates are specified by gender because we need to pick up differences in migration of males and females, particularly females, because they impact births. So the control lever here in migration is that crude migration rate, that 5-year percentage of population that is going to move in or out. And Atlantic represents an example here. We've done this exact same analysis for all 4 of the counties and have developed a number of different scenarios of population change based on the historical patterns. So if you will, history tells us that there's a lot of change in population, but it also represents some bounds of what have we seen at a county level in terms of the lowest period of migration, generally an out migration period, versus the highest period of in migration. And so those bounds allow us to start developing these scenarios, and that's what you're looking at here. Based on the most recent set of migration data, this 20 to 25 period is around 2.3 to 2.7%. What's reasonable within that, and how's it going to change in the future? Well, none of us have a good crystal ball. We develop these scenarios based on some likely events, what we might know from local input, which I'll get to in more detail, to gauge what's going to happen in the future. The highlighted Atlantic scenario 1 is kind of in between the highest and lowest, and that is right now the set of data that was transmitted to the TAC, I think a couple of weeks ago, when these numbers were initiated. So this just summarizes the projection results based on in Atlantic County, that one scenario that you just saw, but the same type of analysis in each of the other counties in the region. So right now what we've presented to the TAC is this set of projections, total population at the county level. Let's pause there and see if there are any questions on the demographic side.
This is Kathy from Vineland. I have a question about migration. Like, I know our county is heavily impacted by Mexican immigrants. I would suspect a large percentage not legal. I'm
Uh,
not
I'm
sure
I'm sorry,
if
I didn't pick up. I'm sorry, I didn't pick up that last part. Is heavily impacted by. I think I heard.
Mexican migration,
Okay, foreign immigration.
probably significant number of illegal immigrants. I'm I've always questioned whether the census captures that or not. Do you have any feeling for that?
I have only feeling. Okay, the data is. Oh, how should I say? Limited. I'll be diplomatic and say limited. The census methods pick it up in indirect ways to the extent that a death occurs, it's picked up in the vital records. To the extent that a birth occurs, it's picked up in vital records. Migration is always the difficult part here, and the Census Bureau's estimates methodology relies heavily on tax return data. So one would generally think that that population is not filing tax returns. So there's the estimates. The census itself tends to pick up undocumented persons. When we do presentations, around the census in New York, we'd always encourage people to just respond. If you have somebody undocumented, still respond. Nobody's going to come to the door. If you don't respond, then somebody comes to the door. So the estimates have always picked up some, but to the extent that it's picking up the large numbers in recent years, I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to put my last dollar on that or my first dollar. Any other questions? Okay. The next piece. So we've got a set of population projections out to the year 2060. Another piece of the demographic side is, well, how many households does that represent? And people living in households. Out of the total population, there are two components: people who live in households, people who live in uh, group quarters, nursing homes, prisons, college dormitories. Those are group quarters populations. They tend to behave very differently than than the general population. And so in the projection model itself, we take account of those populations because best example is fertility. Young college women, very low fertility levels, different from the general population. So we take them out and apply fertility rates to the general population. Households, households are age related, life cycle related. One of the inputs here comes from the American Community Survey, where we can tabulate what we call headship rates. What proportion of each age category is actually the head of the household? So there's one person that defines the head of the household, the householder, and they develop a pattern by age. Easy to understand that young people are less likely, have set up fewer independent households. So headship among the youngest population is very low. By the time you get into middle and older ages, very high. You'll see that in a minute. Those headship rates by age are then applied to the projections. So if a headship rate represents one household, you apply the rate to the population in a particular age category, gives you the number of households in that age category, and sum across the age distribution, and you get the total county level of households. So we compute that population by subtracting out the group quarters, calculating households. We're not adding them back in here. We're just adding them back in the population side, not the household size. And from that, we can calculate the average household size. Population in households, number of households equals average household size. this is what you see in terms of calculating those headship rates. So on average, on a total, and you can see the similarity across all of the counties, about 50% of the population is head of household. 15 to 24, very low, very few independent households at that age because they're moving on, they're living with friends, different, simply not setting up uh, home ownership or families at that point. But you start to see by the time you get into the late 20s and early 30s, significant increase and it increased throughout the rest of the age distribution. Applying those rates at the county level to the population gives us the number of households in each county. Any questions about that portion? And the average household size is simply the total population in households divided by the number of households. Typically, it's going to range somewhere in a 2 point, well, actually, the actual data in the region is about 1.9 to about 2.4 in terms of average household size. Again, pretty typical of national patterns. Okay, hearing nobody jumping in, I'll move.
Oh,
Oh,
excuse me,
go ahead.
just one, I'm sorry, the actual household size in the region, or the average household size, what'd you say, 1.9 to about 2.4 or something? Is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, that
And,
is it.
oh yeah, actually, one quick follow-up. Would you say that's a little bit lower than the national average, about the same or higher, or maybe you can't comment? Or you don't?
Once you get below 2.0, then yes, I'd say that that's getting very low in terms of average household size. You might see very low household size in areas with high elderly populations, individuals living alone, because that's typically what lowers the average household size, single person households. Where you have more family oriented residential patterns, you're going to see higher household size. So if it's below 2.0, 2.1, then you likely should look for other characteristics that are leading towards a uh, very high level of single person households.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay,
I'm
that's a
sorry,
demographic.
quick question, this is Bill at SJTPO. You
Yep.
said the range was 1.9 to 2.4. Is that, was that Cape May, the 1.9, Cape May County? Was that, you know
I don't
what the
have.
rates are per county, or you
Yeah,
know how that?
I don't have the data in front of me, but if I had to speculate on what I'm going to see if I look at the table, I would say you're absolutely right.
Okay.
But I don't have it in front of me. I'll be happy to follow up and provide that data if anybody, David, if you can remind me of those kinds of things that I should be sending to you.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that data.
Okay, we'll get that data out to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly. On the employment side, we'll shift gears in a major way here on the employment side, and the data sources, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, a huge important statistical agency. They're the ones that provide us with monthly unemployment data at the state, national, state, and county level. That data comes from a program called LAUS, Local Area Unemployment Statistics. We get the monthly data. That data is residence based, comes from a household survey, a current population survey. So it's based on employed people at their place of residence. So how many people in Atlantic County are employed that live in Atlantic County? How many people in Cumberland are employed that live in Cumberland? Different sources provide different estimates of employment. Another Bureau of Labor Statistics source that we looked at was the quarterly census of employment and wages. So every employer has to report to the Labor Department on the number of employees, wages, and a variety of things. in covered employment. Covered employment means employees covered by the unemployment insurance program. So you can imagine there are still a lot of employees who are not covered by unemployment insurance. So this source is a subset of total employment. Gives us detail by county and industry, but it doesn't include all employment. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, as I mentioned earlier, primary economic statistical agency. The data that they produce is different from the QCEW. It's regional employment areas. That means state, metropolitan area, county, annual average estimates by industry. Very detailed series of data. Includes more than just the covered employment. It includes a variety of sole proprietors and other types of businesses and employment that is not picked up by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we also looked at third-party organizations. Here's where the Department of Labor, New Jersey Department of Labor comes in. They did projections, short-term projections, but they're again based on the labor data and not capturing all employment. Woods and Poole is a private company, been around for many years. They are an economic modeling firm as well as Lightcast. Both use national models and look at relationships between county and regional economic behavior in relation to the nation. Woods and Poole has forecasts out to the year 2060. Lightcast is a short-term 10-year projection period. For our projections of employment, we're using the BEA REA basis for those. Comprehensive source of different types of employment and captures change annually. And this is the same source that was used almost a decade ago in an earlier project doing this analysis. So that's the historical basis, and it goes back to the year 2001. And we get annual data. So what we do is look at that history, similar to what we did in the components of population change. We look at that history, we develop annual and 5-year periods of change. How has that varied over the course of 20 years? And do a similar type of comparison to the third-party estimates, projections. Their historical data is the same. So the Woods and Poole uses and Lightcast use the same historical data. So what we're looking at is some of their projected assumptions. That historical population and employment, they're interrelated. We sort of all understand that. Change in population, change in employment, there's an interrelationship here that varies over time. Two of the important factors are labor force participation. How likely is the population at different age groups to participate in the labor force? Once people get to the retirement ages, they drop out of the labor force. Labor force participation declines dramatically compared to people in their 40s. There's also an important commuting factor because we've got these sources of data look at employment by residents, and others look at employment by workplace. There's a lot of commuting that goes back and forth. That's where that LEHD data came into play because that provides a pretty detailed set of commuting patterns, both within the region and externally. How many people in southern New Jersey commute to New York City and northern Jersey? That is in the LEHD. A huge qualifier here. Assessing the impact of COVID-19 on all of this is frankly a complicating factor. As workplaces shifted from the typical office workplace to work at home, well, that changes a lot of this. You're going to look at pretty dramatic differences in employment data just in that short period of time around COVID. So understanding how permanent those changes are or how temporary is not an easy thing. Similar look at the History here varies by county. Differences between the BLS Laos and the BEA data. Remember, the Laos data is residence based, so and the BEA is workplace based. So you can see Atlantic County. Well, there's a lot more jobs in Atlantic County than there are employed persons, meaning a lot of people commute into Atlantic County for those jobs. Same thing in Cape May. Cumberland follows the same pattern. In Salem, they're much closer in terms of workplace and residence, but you can also see the percent change is quite variable across the counties and across time periods. So that 15 to 20 period, hugely important one. 2020 annual average would have captured some of the COVID impact, um, and you'll see that in every one of the counties. Big question in doing the forecast is how temporary or permanent is that? So examples. Oh, I should didn't change the title. It's no longer just Atlantic County example, all 4 counties. So this is the Woods and Pool, which is representative of the BEA data, and Lightcast, more representative of the QCEW data, and the New Jersey. And it incorporates projections from 2021 to 2033. Look at the impact of COVID in that 2020 to 21-22 period. How much of that is temporary? How much of it is permanent? And you can see in each of the counties an increase, a rebound, either to or a little bit above what its previous level was. In Atlantic, if you took COVID out of that, the historical trend in Atlantic would lead us to say that Atlantic employment is going to continue to decline. Well, neither the Woods Pool or the Lightcast data would support that there is some turnaround, and you can pretty much see that turnaround and increase in those projections for each of the counties. Now remember, Woods and Pool and Lightcast are both regional and county um, interrelation to the national economic model. Evaluating all of that historical experience as well as the various projections, and some input in terms of local input that we've received. We have increases in each of the counties, increases not as high as the Woods and Pool national model would forecast, but increases in each of the counties reflecting that impact of the COVID rebound, but moderating it. That sharp rebound was driven by factors that we don't believe are going to continue long term. More important are regional changes that we've identified. So that's total. That data is then apportioned into industry sectors, and SJTPO, the travel models use 4 sectors: industrial, retail, office, and other. And so the detail in the BEA data provides us with employment at each of these individual NAICS sectors, and they are aggregated to these summary totals. This is a little bit different from the crosswalk that was used a decade ago, particularly affecting the office and industry sectors. But this crosswalk, the 4 categories that you see, is how we aggregated the data. Now there's another little qualification here. Federal agencies and state agencies do a lot of things with data to protect privacy. And in this case, it's privacy of both employers and employees. And what happens is when you look at detailed sectors, the NAICS sectors, they're affected, they're subject to what the industry calls suppression. Basically, as the Census Bureau does with population data, if they release data that might allow you to identify an individual or a business, they're going to suppress the data. So if they gave you small counts of employment in a detailed industry that would allow you to identify the particular business or businesses that employed those people, they're going to suppress the data. And they're going to suppress another category, because if you only suppressed one category, you'd be able to subtract and get the total, get the other categories. So we've gone through a process of estimating that suppressed data to be able to aggregate into the 4 SJTPO NAICS sectors. And that was what this step is. Once you, and generally these are small numbers. So for example, if you had in a particular county a very low, an industry category or a manufacturing category in a county that really didn't do much manufacturing, and the historical series might have some years reported, well, we'd use that reported data and fill in the holes for all years that didn't report the data or had it suppressed. So there was a methodology of working with the smallest suppression categories and filling in the holes. The big guys, the Woodson Pool and Lightcast, they have their own proprietary methodologies for doing that, which we did not have. And so our methodology was somewhat simplified, but was necessary to fill in those holes and create the full complement. Once that suppressed data was filled in, then they were readjusted to make sure that we equal the county, the reported control total from the county, because the BEA always reports the actual total, as does the Census Bureau. And so once you make an estimate of the suppressed categories, you can adjust them so that everything is equal. This is the result of all those adjustments based on local input and that suppression methodology. The local input adjustments were particularly important here in Atlantic County because of the development, the aviation tech park development, and information that we were able to get on what the expected employment in the county would be over the next 10 years. Same thing with, and Atlantic County also provided information on residential development that was incorporated both into the household projections, as well as what you'll see in the shares to minor civil divisions. Cape May County, similar. We got development data, commercial as well as residential. Cumberland, not as much hard data, but through discussions, we've recognized both in Cumberland and in Salem, growth in the transportation and warehousing sector. And those adjustments have been built in to the data. And these are the projections that, again, were transmitted to the TAC, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. That was a lot of stuff in a little short period of time, a lot of details. So any questions? And Tom Duretsky at Camoin, they do a tremendous amount of work and did a lot of the evaluation work on the employment side. So Tom, if you're out there and there are questions on employment, jump in.
Excuse me, I'll just jump in. We did get a question from Jason Simmons, Federal Highway. Can we use the American Community Survey for 2023 to get an idea of what is happening after COVID?
Oh, to look at the most recent data? The most recent data is the 2022 estimates that were released in 2023. So we did use that data. The 2023 calendar year data won't be released until this coming fall in 2024.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So basically, there's a 2-year lag in the release of the ACS data between the calendar year we're in and the year the data is from,
Right. Correct.
or almost a
Well,
2-year lag.
actually, it's a little less than 2 years. The 1 year data will come out in September. The 5 year data will come out, generally has come out in mid-December.
Okay. I have a question about one of your slides. This is Bill. One of your slides had the historical and projected employment using Bureau of Labor Statistics in Laos and the BEA and the REA. Going
This one?
back a few. No, the one, it was a chart, it was a graph, a table.
Oh,
Well, I think a little bit further back. It was a table. Yeah, that one there.
Yeah.
So what is that showing you again? That table? Yeah, you
wait,
had it right before. The next,
this table?
no, that one right
next-
there, that
yeah,
county
that one,
employment
yeah.
history. Okay, so is that a difference between those two sources of information? There's
Yeah,
a difference between what they're reporting?
there's a big difference. The biggest difference is really conceptual here because the BLS Laos data is residence based. So it's the number of people living in the county who have a job, and that job could be anywhere. They could be working in Philadelphia out of Salem County, but their residence is Salem County. The BEA data is a count of jobs in the
Okay,
county, the employment locations. So there's a big conceptual difference between these two.
okay, thanks. You probably said that, it just didn't sink in at the time.
And believe me, when it comes to employment data, there's a lot that takes a while to sink in.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else?
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. So I've kind of already touched on this, so this is pretty quick. David has solicited input, and the Atlantic City, the international airport, the tech park, a major development initiative in Atlantic County. And as I mentioned, we got from the planning department additional information on residential developments. And also, I didn't mention earlier, but the Census Bureau also has data on building permit activity at the local level, and that data has also been incorporated into the projections. So the county data, as well as the Census Bureau's building permit data, is part of the model. And in where we didn't have that detailed residential information, we still had the building permit data activity. So in Cumberland and Salem, we still had that source to be able to make modifications. And conversations also included news to me that there was a significant amount of development in transportation and warehousing, a new Amazon facility, again, because of transportation routes in New Jersey, make that a very sensible development activity. So that input data was factored into all of the different aspects of both population and employment. And the disaggregation. So all of that I've talked about was at the county level. So the analysis occurs at the county level, and then there's a need to disaggregate that data to minor civil divisions and traffic analysis zones. It's a relatively simple methodology of taking the share that a minor civil division is of the county total in the most recent data. And on the population household size, that comes down to the census data. Shares of each individual MCD of the total, and that share is generally assumed to remain constant throughout the projection period, except to the extent that we had the building permit data, the development data, there were adjustments that were made in those shares in the beginning period And in the case of Atlantic, with what we knew about the 10-year employment growth due to the tech park, that affected those shares in that first 10 years, and then it's moderated after that. So the local input data, local data that we got was part of that adjustment to the local shares, but then they were pushed out to the 2060 period. And David, if you want to talk about the TAS level adjustments.
Okay. Actually, Bob, I don't really have any slides, so I'll just keep your slide up there. But
Okay.
okay. So basically, so you see TAZ levels, and that is the geographic unit used for our travel demand model. So just very generally, TAZs, traffic analysis zones, are used in transportation planning and modeling to analyze and forecast transportation related data and patterns. And they're typically based on factors such as population density, land use, transportation infrastructure, and traffic flow. So for the South Jersey Regional Traffic Travel Model, or the SJTDM as the acronym is known, the TAZs are very loosely based on 2010 census block groups, but there's definitely not a one-to-one correspondence. Some TAZs contain multiple block groups, some intersect parts of TAZs, and some may lie wholly within a block group. So however, we do need that disaggregation, again, to run the travel demand model, which again, a lot of these projections are being, created for. We run the travel demand model for our air quality conformity and predict traffic flow. I mean, it's a major component of our latest planning assumptions. So basically, for the purposes of allocating population to the TAZs, using the use of a specialized GIS tool, Intersect tool, and with the assistance of staff here, Jenna Monahan, who was here a little bit earlier, but also Kent and Bill. We did help, we created a crosswalk between the model TAZs, again, loosely based on the 2010 census block groups, and the 2020 census block groups. This will allow us to allocate the MCD population to the TAZs based on their relative share of the 2020 census population. So hopefully that makes sense. That's again the base year 2020, but then I think for the projecting the out years of the TAZs, again, population and employment, we'll probably just use the same overall MCD growth rates in projecting the TAZ level demographics outward. One other note I did want to add, a little bit later this calendar year, we do have a upcoming new technical study in which we're going to recalibrate and validate our traffic model from the current 2015 validation year to a later validation year, maybe 2020, or I don't know yet. But one of the subtasks of that technical study will be reanalyzing the TAZ zonal structure. And it's, we haven't determined what the TAZs will be based on, but obviously it'll be something other than the 2010 census block group. So we'll adjust them accordingly then. But the adjustment of the TAZ boundaries for this project was beyond the scope of this project. So any questions on just that little piece? Okay, obviously, if things pop up later, you know where to find me. So I'm going to hand it off back to Bob, who will finish off this rest of this slide in the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's really only one additional piece to add here, David, because you've described that process of creating the TAS populations. The other piece of data that we have is based on the LEHD information, because while the BEA data goes to the county level. It does not go to minor civil divisions. But because the LEHD also has workplace location, it's one of their primary data sources, we can develop shares of employment within the county at the MCD level. So that's the other source here that goes into that initial set of distribution of total jobs in a minor civil division. So that data, the LEHD provides the basis for disaggregating the county to the MCD by industry sector. But then the work that David and SJTPO has done is getting the population in the TAS relative to the MCD. And that then is what takes the MCD total by sector and distributes it to the traffic analysis zones. And with that, unless there are additional questions, I'm done with my part here, and I'm not sure, David, how to stop the share on my end. End slideshow, that's not going to kick me off of here, is it? As far, well,
I think that's the correct button in slideshow.
here we go. Okay, stop sharing. There we go.
Okay. And yes, so yes, now I just wanted to hand off the floor to Kent Skellinger, who will give just a summary of the seasonal factors he's creating that will be applied to help develop the seasonal shares. Kent, the floor is yours.
Thank you. To create a seasonal population estimate within the SJTPO region, we used a comprehensive data-driven approach gathering data from a variety of sources. Data sources included the U.S. Census Bureau for permanent residential and housing units in Atlantic and Cape May counties, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection non-potable public water system permits for all 4 counties. Additionally, sewer flow data was acquired from Atlantic County Municipal Utilities Authority and the Cape May County Municipal Utilities Authority, with a particular focus on monthly and some daily sewer flows from the Cape May County MUA to analyze transient housing and campground occupancy. A detailed examination of non-public water systems, particularly campgrounds and marinas, was conducted to assess seasonal occupancy. This review revealed a notable concentration of seasonal campsites in Cape May County, totaling 25,925 campsites, potentially housing 4 occupants per site, which could significantly surpass the census population of 95,634. Conversely, Atlantic County's 2,600 campsites indicated a more modest increase in total housing units. Salem and Cumberland County contributed minimally to seasonal population. Analyzing sewerage flows provided substantial insights, particularly for areas serviced by municipal sewer systems, allowing for the differentiation between seasonal and off-seasonal flows. The seasonal population estimate was further refined by comparing these flows, considering an average water use of 82 gallons per person per day, according to USGS. This analysis yielded a significant seasonal population increase, particularly in Cape May County, where the estimated seasonal population reached 300,896, marking a 315% increase over the off-season population in the Barrier Island communities. This, by the way, is a 30-day average. Since the mainland areas are only partially serviced, it's difficult to create a clear picture with this method. The data suggests that Atlantic County is less variable, with only Atlantic City, Brigantine, Margate, and Longport showing substantial summer increases. Given that these populations are larger, the impact is still significant. As a follow-up, we will be comparing other sources of data, including the Atlantic City Expressway and Garden State Parkway tolls, RIDUS, INRIX signal performance measures, and CAT lab information compiled from vehicle navigation data. The findings highlight a substantial impact of seasonal occupancy on the region, with a notable influx of seasonal residents in Cape May County especially, and underlines the complexity of establishing a robust criterion for seasonal population analysis. This comprehensive approach leverages data from water permits, sewer flow, and census statistics provides a foundation for understanding the dynamics of seasonal population changes within the SJTPO region. If you have any particular questions about the study, I'll be happy to answer them.
Can I just have a quick one about the, sounds like a great way to do it, the sewer usage. How much of like Cape May County do you think is covered by the system and not covered by the system with?
Pretty much all of the barrier islands, and only approximately 30 to 50% of the mainland, and it's particularly difficult to differentiate that into areas that are easily identified as seasonally variable. So in Atlantic County, where its sewer coverage is much more extensive, it's an easier lift to ferret out seasonal versus year-round. In Cape May County, on the mainlands, we're primarily looking at seasonal development, which is how we got into the campground and marina.
Yeah, are the campgrounds covered by the municipal sewer information?
Generally, no. There's a few of them that are, which is why we're depending on water system permits.
Okay. And you probably have a good idea how many people are in those campgrounds anyway, right? I mean, there's records of that.
Campground, the water permits actually specify how many sites, seasonal versus year-round sites. So these are primarily resort campgrounds. They aren't trailer parks or what have you.
Right.
They're gradually converting into more permanent buildings, but these are all as voluntarily reported out by the campground owners in their water permits. And these are primarily the ones that are serviced by their own well systems. So it is a pretty substantial number.
Yeah, and the usage that you get from those campgrounds, you get the impression it's like about 4 people per site?
Cape May County had done some studies on this and established that the number of people present is probably in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 persons per site.
Okay. Yes, that's about right.
Nothing in the chat, I see, so.
Actually, I just had a quick, so Ken, I'm sorry, you said, so in the barrier islands in Cape May County, most of it or all of it's covered by?
Pretty much all of the barrier islands are covered by sewage, public sewage.
Sewage, and in the mainland,
It's much lower.
Much lower, 50%. So the rest would be obviously septic. Okay. Okay, that was interesting. I would have thought it might have been the other way around, but, you know.
So is this to get an idea of the population for the season, or did you also try to get an idea of what the weekend is?
Yeah, well, I did look, I kind of left that out. I did not get anything but monthly data from Atlantic City Municipal Utility, or Atlantic County Municipal Utilities Authority, but I did get data down to the day by day data in the Cape May region. And interestingly enough, it seems like the long-term trend is a more stable, less weekend.
Yeah.
Actually, the highest days were actually during weekdays. They weren't even on weekends. So there was not a indication of a huge weekend bump in sewage flows in Cape May County. Now, all this is dependent on behavior of tourists being similar to behavior year-round. So we're trying to kind of cross-pollinate this with other sources of data. Like I said, I did a cursory review of the Atlantic City Expressway tolls, summer versus winter. They show preliminarily about a 30% bump over the year-round average. If you took the 12-month total toll receipts of the Atlantic City Expressway and compared that to July, it would be about a 31% increase for on a 30-day basis, monthly basis.
Have you ever come across any kind of like gross revenue for like hotels or anything like that?
There is good data out there on, from the state of New Jersey on revenues from room tax and other things, which I have just looked at on a preliminary basis, but it's obvious statewide that Atlantic County is the biggest and Cape May County is not far behind in terms of revenues, but I haven't kind of tried to make some cross connections between the data yet.
Okay. Sure, I imagine a lot of people are staying either for the week or they're down there all summer, as opposed to just coming down on the weekend.
We've converted more to weekly rentals in Cape May County. It seems to be that there's more of a day tripper or a short, a couple of day trips in Atlantic County, and probably because the casino industry kind of tries to push up visitation in the off season with various incentives or what have you. There wasn't as big a summer bump in terms of Atlantic County, but because the census numbers, everything is based on census population. These are multipliers based on the year-round reported census population. And there's a big disparity between number of housing units and the census population in a lot of these areas. So it makes it that although the percentage increase in Atlantic County is not as big, the numbers are generally bigger. So the gross numbers are closer than the multipliers are. You see, particularly like Longport had a big summer bump compared to Atlantic City, but Atlantic City is 30 times bigger than Longport.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay. Any other questions for Kent? Okay. So hearing none, the next item on the agenda is the data dashboard or demonstration. So I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully have some. Okay. Oh, I'm sharing. Okay, so, well, I want to open up the.
There we go.
Hi, my name's John Rodat. I'm working with Bob Scardamelia and Community Associates. I'm doing the online data dashboard for your piece out.
I'm sorry. Before I proceed, I want to make sure, can everybody see the video?
We're not seeing it online.
Okay, let me see if I can try it again.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, let me try again. So
just share there.
Go the other tab, not the Chrome tab yet, or the entire screen.
Okay.
There you go, that one. Bottom share.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Everybody can see there's a man in a cap. Okay, you can see that.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna start the video.
Jersey Transportation Planning Organization's population and job projections. My background is in public budgeting, operations, and systems. My company, Public Signal, specializes in turning reams of data into something comprehensible and hopefully even compelling. Thus our tagline, use the damn data. I apologize for not being with you in person today. After viewing this, should you have any questions or suggestions, please pass them on to David Howard, and he will pass them on to us. What I'm going to show you today is an alpha version. Nope, not even a beta version, not quite there yet. So you're going to see a lot of blank spaces, but hopefully this will give you a taste of what we're doing and what you'll be able to do and see with a fully functional dashboard. A few notes before we begin. As I said, you're going to see some blank spaces. They are here as placeholders and reminders to myself that we're going to have to fill in some blanks. The numbers that you see were from the first round of estimates. They've already been updated, but I've not yet incorporated them into the dashboard. Third, as you view this, please understand that one of my operating principles is to try to give the user or viewer as many opportunities and as much capability of viewing exactly what it is they want to see without moving to another page. What this means is we maximize the use of screen real estate and minimize navigation. It also means you have to learn your way around to controlling what's in view. Having said that, when this goes online, it will be with the capability of downloading the data that's actually being viewed, PDFs, PowerPoint files, or even an image file that can be integrated into other documents. This also means that the title at the top are dynamically updated as the user changes what is on the screen, so that when and if you download something, there is no ambiguity as to what you're actually looking at. With that as background, let me share my screen. So a plain start, pretty conventional. There will be a background page with some acknowledgements. There will be a page for sources, methods, process, although perhaps we'll put this at the end, and a brief moment on the approach to the dashboard and data visualization. In some cases, it will be multiple formats showing the same data because different types of audiences prefer different views. We'll start where we typically start, with a table. Note at the beginning, we have population and we have county in the title. We have a blank space here. Note the population and county are both italicized and they're in a different color. That, as you will see, is because of the ability to update. We're showing, in this case, population by county over the full course of our baseline data running from 2000 to 2020, and our projections running all the way to 2060. Over on the right of the screen, we see several controllers. Those will be for you and others to use. The first is show measure. Well, what do you want to see? In this case, we're looking at population. You can also look at households, jobs, or jobs in specific categories like industrial jobs, office, retail, and others. So let's change it. Note that the numbers are going to change and the title is going to change. So focus your eyes on a specific number in the table and watch what happens. It changed. Because I changed the controller to households, it changed in the title, and it changed on the table. The same will happen when we look at jobs or any of the subsectors of jobs. For the moment, let me go back to population. Notice here it says Dimension 1, county. It also says MCD, or minor civil division. So we're going to stick with population for the moment, and let's change it to MCD. As I said, you and other users will have the ability to display exactly what you want to display, what you want to see, without navigating to another page. When we look at all of the minor civil divisions in the 4-county area, you'll notice I've organized them. I'm showing them at this moment by size. And you'll see this little symbol up here. This means you will be able to resort. But before we do that, let's go back. Let's go back to the county view. And now, let's add a second dimension. So now we have each minor civil division, and it's organized by county. In the final version, there will be subtotals for each county. We can also filter out one or more counties. So say you're working in Salem County and you only want to show that. So you click, if there is such a word, click Salem, hit apply, and there you are. Notice, like I said, this is an alpha version, so I need to change the county listed here. And I'm going to need to show that it's italicized and in a different color. And I need to change what's shown here. You will also be able to, once you filter down to the county level, if you only wanted to look at, say, 3 minor civil divisions, you would be able to do that. You would be able to filter out all the others. And here too, notice in this case, it's organized alphabetically. Again, that's something that you, the user, will be able to control. Oh, and keep an eye out for this apply button. You'll see it early and often. Now let's go back to just the county level data. And here is another view, again, tabular, of the same data, but in this case, you'll note that is for a particular period, 2020. And we have the subtotals for each county, and we have the percentage that each minor civil division represents of the total. This was sneaky. Let me show you why. But first, notice there's a new controller, year. For a moment, focus your eye on a particular number, and watch what happens as I click the year controller. It changes. Now, these are the same baseline numbers or projections that you saw earlier, but we're focused on a particular year. And as is typically the case, it's not every year, it's every year evenly divisible by 5. Note also that the 100% is for everything that's shown. Now, if I just want to show Salem County, it recalculates so that the percent of the total reflects what's on the screen, not the total for the region. And again, we can change what's in the view. So here, I just picked this at random, we're showing office jobs. And you can get rid of the filter in a couple of ways. You can pull the pull down again and click them all. Or there's a tiny little X by what looks like a funnel. You click that and it removes the filter. What on earth is this? Well, if you work in the geek arena in which I would work, this is called a tree map, not a geographic map. This is if you will, substitute my preferred type for the pie chart. It is showing you exactly the same numbers as what we just looked at for a particular time, a particular view, a particular measure. Right now, let's go back to population, and it's showing you the county, the minor civil division, the number associated with this particular measure, and the percent of the total shown. It's color coded or color shaded. Now, some of these boxes are simply too small to be readable. Online, you will be able to mouse over and say, oh, what's that little one? And what's this little one? And it will give you the place, the county, and the number that's being displayed. The whole point of this is to give you a quick and dirty visual sense of proportionality. This does something similar. It's a more conventional view, organized in pretty much the same way, color-coded in pretty much the same way. And this also can be resorted high to low, low to high, or alphabetically. And let me return this to county. And here's a visual display of the aggregate figures over the long term graphically. Not only does the title update dynamically, so does the legend. Right now we're looking at population. Keep your eye on that legend. Let's change it to jobs. And not only did the graphic change, the legend changed. And yes, We can create this, which may not be useful for everybody. I don't find it particularly useful, but if you were interested just in Cumberland, say, or Salem County, it would reconfigure this graphic. And again, you've got the pop-up when you mouse over. Now I'm going to show you a couple of different maps. The reason is we're still experimenting. So right now we're displaying county level, we're displaying population, we're displaying 2020, and they're color coded, and the numbers are overlaid on each county, which means you actually have to read them, which is why, frankly, we're still experimenting. But we can drill down. We're showing population, but now we're showing it for each minor civil division. They are not name labeled. It simply becomes too busy. But again, the pop-up works. So there's a very small place here, geographically small, Shiloh. So in the year 2020, it had a population of 4391. And we can go down to Cape May Point, we can go to West Cape May, we can go to Lower, and so on. But say you don't want to search by just mousing around. Say you want to look at a particular place. Let's take Avalon. Then you simply click on the color legend that's over on the right, and it will take you to the map with the particular number. And to get rid of that, you just click in the empty space on the map. Now, here's a different map. This one, I must admit, still needs work. We're still experimenting. This does not overtly show the numbers. It does show the values based on the size of the circle. If we want to look at the county numbers, we choose geographic level. And again, we're looking at 20, this happens to be 2035. Note also that the size of the circles is proportionate to the size of the measure being displayed. And again, color coded, but in this case, there are two forms of color coding. One for the background area and one for the size of the circle. Again, this is a work in progress, trying to capture a lot of information, make it as useful as possible. More to come.
Okay, I guess, option. Okay, all right. So as John said, if you have questions, shoot them to me, and I'll I'll route them to John Rodat. So that the last piece was I just want to mention the next steps. Basically, I would like to, and I don't have a slide for this, bring forth these year-round county and MCD level projections to the May TAC and policy board meetings respectively for approval. So, again, get approval. The TAZ numbers, that was not my intent to bring them to the board for approval. I think they're very granular. Generally, we don't bring that to the policy board or TAC unless there's a request to review them. But the MCD and county level numbers, I'd like to bring them forth to the TAC and policy board for their approval at the May meetings. So I would request any comments or questions you have, if you can get them to me. I'm going to say about 2 weeks, April 22nd. I'll follow this up with an email too, so you can, just so you have it in writing. Any comments or questions you had on the presentation, or
Is the presentation going to be sent out?
yes, okay, that's a good question. Bob, can we share the presentation with the participants?
Definitely.
Okay, all right, yeah, we'll share the presentation, and I did, as Bob alluded to, I did email out a couple weeks ago the most recent, well, I think what we would like to have the TAC and Policy Board approve MCD and population projections, but I'll resend them because, it's possible maybe you didn't get a chance to look at them. So I'll resend them, all of that in an email, the latest population and employment projections at the MCD and county levels, along with the presentation. So again, if you can get me, I'm sorry, any comments or questions within the, next 2 weeks on the year round. And then internally, we'll work with the consultant team and with SJTPO staff on the seasonal numbers. So hopefully we'll be able to get something out by the end of the month for your review and of that. And then probably a little bit after, probably next month, we'll have, maybe we'll have a beta version or maybe, a later version of the data dashboard that we can unveil. But that's probably not gonna, the more pressing things is getting the fixing or locking in the demographic projections. So that's all I had. And again, thank you again for all your time and attention. I appreciate all your interest. Any final questions for the good of the order? And again, you know where to find me. So if you think of something as after this meeting, just you know where to find me. Give me a call or send me an email. Or questions on the data dashboard, things that you like or didn't, you had questions about. Okay, hearing none, then I think I will call this meeting to a close. And thanks again, everybody, for your time, and hope you see the eclipse. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's clear enough for a good view.
You won't be
Thank
seeing
you,
us.
everyone.
Thank